Good morning. Inspiration, as I've mentioned before, comes from everywhere, or anywhere, or nowhere. And I was flashing back on an old TV show from the probably late 60s, early 70s, Get Smart, about a spy, Maxwell Smart. And it was a comedy. It was pretty funny. But the inspiration came from what they called the cone of silence. When they were in their headquarters, and Maxwell was meeting with his boss and colleagues, these plexiglass cones would come down and envelop waist high, come down from the ceiling and cover them so they could be covert. But the humor came when they they had to yell because they couldn't hear each other in the cone of silence. And so this made me think, can we hear ourselves in our own cone of silence? And I think the answer lies in, like most else, what's our intent? What's our intent of creating a circle of silence? To envelop oneself in peace and quiet. And does the outside world shout at us so that we can hear it and pay attention? Or does it just... Sorry, I'm peeking at my notes. I wanted to mention self-design space or pocket of quiet. And I mentioned intent. I started this off with intent. What is your intent? Is it supposed to be a barrier to keep the outside out? Or is it permeable? Can the outside come through without disturbing the intent, the purpose of this self-created pocket of silence? And here I want to give credit yet again to the two Buddhas that seem to be assigned to me personally. And I have to say here that because they're assigned to me purposely, or they appear to be assigned to me, is not about exclusivity. They're not my Buddhas. They can be in many places, forms, and helping as many beings as need their help. So there's no exclusivity. There's nothing special about me other than I'm a man who's really wholeheartedly embraced my ordinariness, my lack of differentiation from anyone or anything else. Because separating, division, is the antithesis of what's so. It's unity. It's togetherness. But these two Buddhas protect me. Milafo, who is the court gesture, who is non-stop talker and continually somersaulting as we move along. And Roger Bacon, the Franciscan friar, who's close to 7 feet tall, his hood covers his face, is just shadows, and he never has anything to say as he floats because he doesn't have feet. He floats about 12 to 18 inches off the ground. Adding to his already imposing height. So I got a little Milefo. Damo, sorry. Apologize to Milefo. Damo. And I think of Milefo because we would think that the smiling Buddha would be closer to playing the role of the fool, the court gesture. But I like contrast. And Damo with his stern demeanor, I've found to have incredible sense of humor, a playfulness, and probably my envisioning him as dressed as a 13th century British court jester, who can get away with saying things to the king that other people would be decapitated for. They'd have a visit to the gallows. So humor can mask criticism. Humor can make criticism more palatable, more acceptable to the subject of the criticism. I'm not sure about Trump. When I watch the cartoon president, and I watch it episode after episode and find it really amusing. I'm not sure that Trump has a sense of humor, much less thick enough skin to take any sort of criticism, even couched in humor. And somehow his inability to accept criticism, he lashes out at those that poke fun at him. Where his predecessor, wishful thinking, his predecessor Obama was always seemed more than willing to see a cartoon making fun of his big ears. And I think he took it in the spirit that it was given. So probably to survive in this world peacefully, it's a good idea to develop a thick skin. But I was mentioning my Buddhas and the protection. I feel like my cone of silence, my circle of silence is quite large. They say that our aura is twice our spreading of arms. So we all have a potential to have this same. But my Buddhas are vigilant and never far away. They're so ubiquitous that sometimes I forget and I need to remind myself to thank them yet again. But my circle of silence is protected by my 2 Buddha friends. And it seems that those without the purest intents are at least neutral intentions. Those that wish me harm in any way, physical, mental, emotional, spiritually, are kept at arm's length by this protective circle of silence. So this is where I found my silence that eluded me when I vigorously, through Raja Yoga, through strict attempts at controlling the mind, through steps of quieting, and through will, according to this yoga path, at least my interpretation, my experience. And remember, I'm not without experience. I spent more than 30 years because in my ignorance, I thought this was the only path available because of its popularity with the Western sensibilities. It's what's been available to us. So silence was to silence the mind, was to be in a state of clarity. And it's funny, we always long for what's most elusive. And my life has been anything but clear. Fog, muddied. My name, Hayes, Hayes, my family name, it sounds the same as Haze. And if there's one condition that's been a lifelong companion, it's been this haze. This opposite polarity of clarity. So hence my desire. But it never said well. Wondering why I was gifted with a seemingly fine mind, capable of many tasks. Why would I want to silence this when, after all, the tools in my arsenal were extremely limited? The mind being probably the foremost tool, the most accessible, the best, the strongest tool that I had in my toolbox. And now I was practicing through deprivation, through discipline, to shut down one of my few tools. Well, I tried. My intentions were to accomplish this, and we know that good intentions are most times pave the road to hell. This certainly seemed like to be applicable in my case. Even my vegetarianism, which my body was not happy with. I don't do very well. My digestive system doesn't do very well with vegetables, especially raw vegetables. My system just is not designed to manage raw food. So my vegetables would tend to be overcooked, and that means that the good parts of the vegetable would mostly leach out. And my reliance on carbohydrates, breads, to fill me, beans, potatoes, to fill me. But Even though my body didn't readily accept these heavy doses of carbohydrates, it did better than it did with veggies. And fruit has always had too much sugar in it, as I'm sensitive, always been on the border of diabetes. So fruits are a treat. Veggies are a side dish. And chicken or turkey seem to be my main course, with few exceptions. But what does this have to do with the circle of silence? This self-created circle of silence, which I mentioned my two Buddha friends, Roger and Damo, maintain for me. But the mind I started to see that needed to be, if not silenced, at least tamed, was the monkey mind, that senseless chatter that fills most of our craniums. Chatter, 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 chatter. Well, through taming means toning it down. The voices are not so loud, and I've assigned them to the realm of nonsense, where they belong. No solution will come from my monkey mind, but it's there still, no matter how rigorously, how much in denial I was delusional at times, thinking that I had conquered this mind, but wondering where the clarity was, because things were no clearer than they've ever been. But what I started to sense, that my strength in this cloudiness, this confusion, this indecision, given time, as the case of muddy, still waters, the heavier particles will sink to the bottom, leaving the clear mind. So even though I had this friend of silence that in my cone, in my circle, in my envelope, was rewarded with silence. And this silence, I might add, never threatened my confused state. I dwell in a state of confusion, and I not only accept it, I relish it, because I want to know the sources of my confusion. And the sources of my confusion is that separation, filing, categorizing, and eventual storage of information in a system that would be readily accessible. In other words, when I needed to know it, it would magically appear, the system that I had created. So this confusion was a source, it was an impetus, it was a source of inspiration, I've always been inspired by confusion because it meant to me that I'm alive and well and there's more work to be done, more assignments. I mentioned I love to give the monkey mind jobs, and it loves to please the master. If I put it to work, its absence is appreciated and enjoyed by me. But then it comes back like a nice little dog and drops the bone at my feet. It had successfully completed its assignment, and it was awaiting another. So, my resolution, my ultimate solution to this never-ending chatter of the monkey mind was tone it down and give it work to do. And the bones that it brought to me would go to the greater mind to be sorted. The greater mind's job is simply to determine what is not so. And what an effective tool it is to help us relegate information, input from the senses, input from the mind, input from the emotions, to lump it together, to separate the not so, to save, to store the potential of the rest that it hadn't discarded to the realm of the not so. And this was information that this is where the heart takes over, at least for me. The heart can determine, take this lump of possibilities and slowly put into the process of storing and filing things that I know to be so, that I've found to be so. But the great majority of it, again, is in the realms of the unknowable, stored for future scrutiny. As I grow, by design, part of my growth is made possible by utilizing, by finding elements that had assigned to the unknown or unknowable that indeed could be reviewed and safely put, stored, filed, managed in the realm of what I know to be so. But this circle of silence, circle of quiet, circle of peace, circle of love is the secret to maintaining a state of equanimity. It allows me to not be reactive to either what seems to be good and what seems to be not so good. To accept everything in stride. But to maintain this state of equanimity, you need some protection. And this protection is afforded by my two Buddhas who support my own circle of silence, circle of stillness. So no matter how chaotic the world is around me, unpredictable, I carry with me wherever I go this ring of sanctuary, stillness, peace, joy that cannot be disturbed by anything that happens around me. The only way it can be disturbed is if something is amiss within me. When something's amiss within me, my circle crumbles. Along with it, equanimity temporarily eludes me. So I can see the consequences very well of becoming too closely identified, taking things too personally that happen to me or around me. As far as we know, the events around us are random, totally random. This is the nature of change. Change never takes into consideration anything about your adopted sense of well-being. Quite the contrary, change is a never-ending test of all that you are. And it's through forgiveness. Self-forgiveness is the first step. Before you're able to forgive those around you, you have to forgive yourself first. And this is a process of healing from the eventuality, from the event of something that disturbs the inner you, distracts the inner you. So this element of forgiveness, and it's never been for me forgive and forget. Forgive is without boundaries, without qualifications is true forgiveness. But if you forget, you're losing an opportunity that the universe provided to you as a teaching. I've always found that if I ignore, neglect, forget lessons from the past, that the universe will create new opportunities to remind me. And at first it might be just a gentle tapping on your finger. And if you ignore it, it might elevate to a stronger tap on your shoulder. And that's where the staff of the masters always came in. When they say, I hit you with the stick. Well, the universe might hit you with the stick. And what I know to be so is that this escalates. And pretty soon, you need to get hit upside the head with a 2x2, 2x4, and eventually 2x6, and then a log and a tree, until you get it and go, oh, this is an aha moment, by the way. Oh, that hurt. I don't want to do that again. So what's the steps I can take to help prevent, to learn through mistakes? And there's another word, mistake. Mistake. You didn't understand the true inherent message when you had the first opportunity. And this is where forgetting is most obviously less than desirable, because as you forget, you open the opportunity to be reminded. So you need to remember your lessons, not to repeat them time and time again. We're creatures of patterns, after all, and we tend to make the same mistake multiple times. And until we even become aware that we're making these mistakes, most of them escape us. Until we become aware that we have a pattern, there's no self-correction possible. So all that I've talked about in this is enveloped, enclosed, encased in my cone of silence, my circle. Actually, it's a sphere of silence to nurture, to protect, to provide an opportunity for contemplation, to be a fertile ground for inspiration, inspiring thoughts, actions, or deeds are nurtured by being in the center of this sphere of protective silence, peace, and joy. And just as a hothouse protects and nurtures delicate plants, in particular orchids, this hothouse, this greenhouse can serve you well. Look for it, listen for it, actively seek to develop it. It's there, it's yours to have and to hold.